Prompted by his parents' deafness, this morning's guest entered a field to change the lives of many. Who is he? You'll meet him coming up next on this morning's Carolina People. Good morning. Welcome to Carolina People. This morning we're on 4th Avenue in Conway at the Coastal Regional Outreach Center for the South Carolina School for the Deaf and Blind. We're visiting with Scott Falcone, the director of the Midlands Regional Outreach Center. Good morning, Scott.
That is correct. Good morning.
Thanks so much for getting in. A lot of mouthfuls there, getting that out. A lot going on with the South Carolina School for the Deaf and Blind right now.
Absolutely. There's a lot going on with the school, and especially just like you said, with regional outreach centers, we're located all over the state and trying to get that mouthful in for each area.
I think we heard earlier in the week there's 6 statewide.
There's 6 centers statewide, and it's divided up into 4 regions.
Okay.
We have the Piedmont region, Midlands region, Low Country region, and the Coastal region, where we are today.
We're here now. That's right. And Dorothy had mentioned, of course, Conway, this location serves O'Ree plus 11 other counties. I think Florence is wrapped into the Coastal Regional Outreach Center.
That is correct. That is correct.
Fascinating when we think about that. And of course, the need, earlier in the week, Marty McKenzie was with us, sharing that aspect of he had the ability to go to Spartanburg, to the main residential campus, but his family wouldn't, or his dad really said, we want you here close at home, and we're going to find a way to make it work, even with you here.
Absolutely, and that's what outreach services is about, is to support those services out there and work with the school districts or the public school districts that are in the mainstream setting, or students who are going to be mainstreamed, and that's why we're here. We're not just in Spartanburg, we're all over the state, and we're out there to serve individuals with sensory disabilities, or in the school systems too.
Or multi-handicaps, or I'm sure there are multiple levels.
Yes.
Real quick about yourself, Scott. Are you originally from the area?
I am not. I am from upstate New York, Syracuse, New York. My wife and I moved here a little over 5 years ago.
Is that right?
That's
a little
correct.
over 5 years. What prompted the move to the Palmetto State?
The South Carolina School for the Deaf and Blind. I previously worked in a mainstream school district in upstate New York. It was a deaf education mainstream program that I worked in, and came down here, vacationed quite a bit in South Carolina growing up. And one time my parents and I, we were down here on vacation. I said, gosh, there has to be some place here that provides interpreting services in case my parents decide to buy property in the area and retire down here. That's when I came across the South Carolina School for the Deaf and Blind. Actually, it was this center here in Conway was the first center I ever contacted, and when I came in, introduced myself, introduced my parents, and this was back in 1995, I believe. And they said, we got to get you down here. The rest is history.
Yes.
They got me down here.
That is fantastic. You mentioned if your parents had interpretive needs, and was that a prompting for you early on, Scott, to get you interested in working with the deaf?
Actually, no. I grew up, actually my focus was to be in communications. My degree is in business. Growing up as the oldest child, it's just my sister and myself, I had too many responsibilities, interpreting for mom and dad and things like that. So I kind of did not want to do anything in deafness, let's put it at that. So when I went away to college, I decided to focus on business, or something that I was more interested in. And while I was in school, somebody told me, you speak with your mom and dad with hands. And I said, yeah. Well, there's this test going on down there. I think you need to go check it out. So I did, and it was a test for national certification for sign language interpreting. Called my mom and dad up and said, I'm broke, please send me more money, but I need some money to take this test. And they sent me some money. I took the test. I ended up passing the certification, took a piece of paper and filed it away, and never did anything with it, and now I'm utilizing it quite a bit.
That's fantastic, yes. Now, when we think about, obviously, communicating that language with your hands, this is American Sign Language.
Correct.
This has been, earlier in the week, obviously, Kathy kicked off the week, and when we think about that aspect for interpreting, This is not only has gone back a long way, but the experiences oftentimes differ depending on regions. I mean, there are even some different dialect differences in ASL.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that was one thing that I had to learn is, coming to the southeastern region of the United States, that there was quite a few different signs, if you will, or different dialects, like you put it.
What was that like with your parents being, just that direct question, Scott, early on with your parents being deaf?
Oh, just and it was different. We grew up in a suburban area of Syracuse, New York. It's just regular upper middle class families, and we grew up in a Jewish neighborhood. My parents and myself, my parents being deaf, and we were Roman Catholics or Italians and living in a Jewish neighborhood. It was kind of interesting,
Right.
because at Christmas time we'd have all the lights on, but at the same time our lights would always go on and off when the phone rang or when the doorbell rang.
Yeah,
So,
sure.
it's like you can always find our house. I'm sure people from airplanes can see our house with the lights going on and off left and right, whether it's what season it is, So.
That's hilarious. We want to talk to Taffy a little bit about that tomorrow. She'll be with us. Of course, that aspect you're talking about, when the phone rings, the lights go on, I guess, to let folks know.
To let my parents know that the phone is ringing. There's a separate line for the phone, and then there was a separate line for the doorbells.
Right.
When the doorbells went off in the house.
I think I saw there was something for a baby cry signal.
Yeah, my
oftentimes.
parents had a baby cry signal. Now they've improved them so much. Technology obviously has come such a long way, back to when I was born or when my sister was born. But they're I remember these big, huge machines. We have a TTY sitting here on the table. The TTY that my parents used to have back when they first, when they first became a home product, so to speak, they looked like big, huge mailboxes.
Right, sure.
And I used to sit right in our den, and it was just amazing. We used to have little, neat things that our friends growing up would always come over, and they'd be like, "What is that?"
Oh, yeah,
It was
sure.
interesting.
That would be cool. And of course, you grew up in that, so this was normal to you.
Right.
Obviously, growing up in that setting, but like hanging out with neighborhood friends or going over to their house and seeing their mom and dad talk to them. What do you ever think back on that time and reflect on it as any different, or you just think this is the way I grew up? Everything was. When did you recognize that things were different? Was it virtually at the get-go, or?
It really not until maybe middle school, when you started doing plays and
Right.
where parents were encouraged to come to certain events that happened in school. Back prior to 1990, the ADA law passing as far as requirements for interpreters, for sign language interpreters, what have you. My mother is a businesswoman, and she's been with her company for over 38 years now. She has an interpreter that works with her on a regular basis, that used to go with her all the time at different school functions. And that would embarrass me in middle school. I would be up there, and there would be this person standing on the stage
wow.
signing everything, and I would kind of hide, because all the friends would my peers would say, that's because of Scott's mom and dad. So it was always something that stood out. No matter where I was, if my parents were there was always this extra person or this extra piece of machinery or something. So it was different. It was.
This must help so much now for you, Scott, in your work with the Midlands Regional Outreach Center and communicating with folks, albeit you're not deaf.
Right.
But at the same time, obviously your interpretive skills must be strong, but your ability to talk to them about what it's like because of this familial interest or knowledge there.
Yeah, it is. It's the lifelong experience is so applicable to what I do on a daily basis. I thank my parents for everything they've done. Of course, my education's helped me out a lot too, but at the same time, I've noticed just having the lifelong experience differs from those who actually went to school and learned about the culture or studied about the culture. It's a lot different when you're brought up in it, because you just have that culture right in here that you carry with you every day.
Moving down here 5 years ago and thinking about the commitment of the South Carolina School for the Deaf and Blind, it's been committed, I think, since mid-1800s, not only to the state when it kicked off for either deaf or blind first, and then 5 or 6 later adding the other.
Right.
It's
What's the real mission there when we think about that? And of course, mission statements can come out in many ways, but the real focus there is what?
It's to ensure the individuals realize maximum success through high-quality educational programs, outreach services, and partnerships statewide. That's the mission statement of South Carolina School for the Deaf and Blind.
When we think about partnerships, there are a heck of a lot of those. Obviously, just yesterday we were with Linda talking about BabyNet, the early intervention program, and there's a lot going on, a lot of different partnerships. She kept throwing out acronyms. It seemed like a heck of a lot of different partnerships that go on all the time.
Yes. As a matter of fact, we're going all over state, working with hospitals, 911 emergency centers for TTY communications, understanding ASL communication, how different it is from the English language, and partnering up with these people. It's excellent. I mean, the one thing I cannot say enough about the South Carolina School for the Deaf and Blind, being that the main campus is in Spartanburg, with all these outreach centers and where we're located strategically throughout the state of South Carolina. We're so far ahead of the eight ball. We have so much to offer, and there's so many services under our roof. It's a good feeling to be part of this family.
I bet it is. And of course, for you, having grown up in a deaf home, in a situation like that, and much of your training, I assume, early on was focused on deaf. How about the transition for you to really be able to focus intently on the blind component or the multi-handicap component of the school?
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. What had happened when I first moved here 5 years ago, I started off in the Columbia Center, and then they transferred me up, or I actually promoted myself up into a different position, and I worked with the cooperative program for the deaf and blind, which is another program offered by the School for the Deaf and Blind. It's a partnership or a cooperative agreement, if you will, between the South Carolina School for the Deaf and Blind and Spartanburg Technical College. The School for the Deaf and Blind has an office at Spartanburg Tech, and it's right in the Disability Services office. And we have approximately 7 interpreters that work in that office that are employed by the School for the Deaf and Blind. We have an assistive technology lab there that has embossers, CCTVs, color CCTVs, books on tape, all the information any student in the Spartanburg Technical College setting would need.
Right.
And that's where I first learned, or I really dove in and learned a lot about the blind aspect, if you will, as far as the School for the Deaf and Blind. You just learn every day in this business. You really do.
Hearing Dorothy, she was with us a few months ago at our studio in Myrtle Beach, and hearing her talk about the experience for her, much of her time growing up, or spending time in Scranton around that area in a school for the deaf, but visiting the residential campus in Spartanburg and seeing blind children perform ballet, for instance, and the excitement for her to see something which she hadn't been experiencing for 30 years plus, and to be able to see that of blind children performing ballet, much like any non-visually impaired child. Pretty powerful, I'm sure. And as you say, learning every day, Scott.
It is. It's a wonderful feeling. The campus is beautiful, and the things that happen up there are amazing. People often think, how, like you said, ballet performed by blind children, or even deaf children performing musical instruments. I mean, that happens also.
That's absolutely.
So, both sides of it. It's just amazing.
Speaking of musical instruments, I think we talked a little bit of that earlier before we started. Your sister got interested in a musical background. I think is pursuing even further studies in music. Was that prompted by your parents at all early on?
Absolutely. My parents wanted to raise us both, my sister and I, as normal children, if you will, or the norm of society, and they made us take karate lessons. I played baseball and went to college on a baseball scholarship, and my sister had a love for music, and she wanted to be involved with marching band, and just one thing went to another, and when she was ready to go to school, she decided that she wanted to be a music ed major, and she did that, and my parents never missed a performance, a recital, or anything that happened that revolved around my sister, and the support from both of our parents has led to her success, including mine, in the fields that we so much love.
Absolutely. We talked a little bit with Kathy about that with Kathy Stair on Monday, about that aspect of when she started her first interpreting class. She was the only non-deaf person in the class, and she felt at times there who were kind of making fun of her behind her back, doing language that she wasn't familiar with. And that aspect, of course, when you think about you and your sister growing up in a house where your parents can't hear everything or anything.
Oh, we used to do that all the time.
Your poor parents there. I mean, when you got old enough to know what you were doing.
Right, yeah.
Where you could really take advantage of the situation. You could get away with some big stuff.
We tried. We never really did get away with it, but we tried. The fun part for my sister and I would be to pretend like we were deaf. And we knew sign language well enough so we could go out into the community. And then we'd listen to what people say, just to hear what people's comments were. And it was quite interesting.
My God, that's hilarious. Yeah.
So we do the reverse type psychology, if you will, versus, we tried it at home and we knew we weren't going to get away with it.
Sure.
So, but it was fun. It was different.
I guess much like being in a foreign country and pretend, just speaking English all the time, even if you can speak Spanish or French, and then listening to the natives speak, which would be hilarious.
Absolutely.
That's great, Scott. And of course, again, that gives you the practical touch, such that you can be even that much more active with children who are deaf, or even now who are blind, to be able to work with them, or seriously visually or hearing impaired. Or of course, when we think now, of course, it's not in the name South Carolina School for the Deaf and Blind. We talk about multi-handicap,
that's right,
which really come into play on the main residential campus. Does that come into play on the district outreach centers as well?
It's sensory multi-handicap.
Okay.
With the School for the Deaf and Blind, the multi-handicap school is sensory, so there's a sensory disability that's associated with the multi-handicap. Not so much in the mainstream setting. We don't work with that. We have the vision outreach program, the hearing outreach program, and TDP, which you had spoke to Taffy about that, and some of the other programs that we offer, but something related specifically to the multi-handicap in the outreach centers. Not really. Usually it's through the main campus itself.
Okay. Who is eligible, for viewers who may not know, if their children or grandchildren, niece or nephew or employees, a child is eligible to attend? Who is eligible to attend?
Absolutely. Sensory disabilities, deaf or any type of hearing, severe hearing loss, visually impaired or blind, or sensory multi-disabled like we had talked, South Carolina resident. They go through the admissions process. They contact our main campus, get information on admissions. And it's, believe it or not, there is a cost, and it's a $40 cost to go to the school, and that's the student activity fee.
To cover stuff if you're doing stuff off campus or on campus, stuff right there.
Exactly. But that's about it as far as the tuition.
$40.
Yeah, $40.
Okay, and there's probably even scholarship opportunities for that, for families that may have trouble with that,
yes,
I'm sure.
Absolutely.
I'm sure. And of course, that aspect of, there are age parameters there as well. When would a child be, and of course we talked yesterday about early intervention program, and so of course the experience there for the mother who is working with her child until age 3.
Right.
What age would a child be available to attend the South Carolina School for the Deaf and Blind?
We work with children all the way up to age 6, and it's when the child is ready.
Okay.
As far as working with a child through the early intervention program, the IFSP, pretty much when they're ready, and obviously when the parent is ready. Sometimes parents choose to keep them in the local school district and mainstream them, or they'll opt for the School for the Deaf and Blind.
Do you all encourage the parents to come up and visit?
Oh, absolutely. I think everybody should visit the campus. It's a beautiful campus, and it gives everybody a sense of what's really behind the outreach centers. If you're familiar with the outreach centers, you don't have the whole picture until you've been on campus.
And if you've been on campus, you may not have a full picture of what all the outreach centers do.
Absolutely, because that's exactly how it was for, I had the reverse effect when I first started here. I worked in the Columbia Outreach Center for a couple of years before I transferred up to Spartanburg. And then I was like, wow, I cannot believe how big this organization really is. So
it was fascinating this morning to see a very sizable annual budget, to see a good chunk of that covered by the state, some federal, then fees and even donations are needed. I mean, there are really funds. Seems like there have been cutbacks across the state, across the board, in virtually every program. You all have not been untouched either. I mean, everyone's been touched by that. So there's needs oftentimes for donations as well.
Absolutely, and our Walker Foundation, donations can always be sent to Walker Foundation, earmarked for the school or for any specified area of the school, including outreach.
Right, right. I think we got about 5 minutes, Scott. We want to highlight I think the Coastal Outreach Service Center has a golf tournament coming up.
Sure
Now,
does.
you've helped put that together, I think June 11th.
That's correct.
Share with the viewers a little about what's coming up.
Yeah, June 11th will be, it'll be our first annual, hopefully annual. I'm trying to push Dr. Dorothy Bamback into making this an annual
That's right,
event.
absolutely.
Our first benefit golf tournament, and the funds and the proceeds for this golf tournament will go directly to outreach services, to the Coastal Regional Outreach Service Center, and help support the programs that we do, or the programs that help serve individuals with sensory disabilities within the area.
Mm-hmm. In the same way, if someone if their funds here from the golf tournament focus just on the Coastal Regional Outreach Center, if someone wanted to make a donation, they could say, I want to make it to Midlands, or I want to make it to the Coastal Center as well, as opposed to just a group fund.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
Okay, and the particulars of the golf tournament, I think I saw you've got a 9 a.m. shotgun start there
That's
at
correct.
Eagle Nest Golf Club. And,
That
of course,
is
we
correct.
could call the local center, the 843-248-8100 number. Of course, that's down here in Horry County, but I'm not sure what day of the week that is, but that's a great day. I'm sure a lot of folks can come in for that.
It's on a Saturday, and also, the local number they can call if they're local, and then anybody that's out of the local calling area, they can also call the 1-800 number for outreach services, and get some more information on that also.
Great. Do each of the outreach areas have their own golf tournaments? Do you all have one in the Midlands area?
This is the very first golf tournament, and I'm hoping it's going to be a spin-off so I can do mine next
so
year.
you can do one over there in the Midlands area.
Absolutely, absolutely.
That's great. Now, do you still do some interpreting, Scott, of your own?
A little bit, not so much. My job really is, there's a lot of emphasis placed on awareness of the School for the Deaf and Blind. I travel quite a bit
Really?
throughout the state, providing presentations.
Great. The Midlands area, within the Midlands area, are you traveling throughout the state?
Well, I'm in the Midlands area, but currently I've been working throughout the state, covering some areas. We're working with school districts, special ed directors, and school districts statewide, just to kind of provide some awareness. And I talked about the 911 emergency center that's in the Low Country area. So we work outside of our area.
Mm-hmm.
We help
Marty
each other out.
McKenzie was with us on Tuesday, and hearing him talk about, and I think we mentioned that a few minutes ago, his dad not wanting him to go to Spartanburg and wanting to keep him there. And he was saying that he was the only child with any hearing impairment, any serious hearing impairment, anywhere around Williamsburg County. Even though he grew up in southern Florence County, there was a teacher, Margie Holliday. Hearing him talk about Margie Holliday and the experience for that teacher, for you guys, for you all, to be able to see really dedicated teachers who oftentimes have a one-on-one commitment to these students. Because the numbers aren't high enough, or because a lot of the students that go up to the residential location in Spartanburg, you see some truly dedicated professionals.
Absolutely, and that's pretty much what I did when I was in the mainstream setting. I worked with some deaf students that were in a regular mainstream classroom setting, and it was myself and a couple of deaf students, and it was more of a one-on-one situation like Marty's situation was, and we would have an itinerant teacher for the deaf and hard of hearing that would come in through a different program that the school contracted with. So it is. It's a unique experience for the child, or for someone like Marty, to have that experience with a one-on-one situation in a regular in a public school classroom, if you will,
Right.
versus being in a residential setting.
What's the best way if a viewer wants to learn more about whether it's the South Carolina School for the Deaf and Blind, or exactly what folks who are visually or hearing impaired go through on a regular basis, whether it's children or adults? What's a good way for a viewer, if they don't have access to the internet, if they wanted to call or visit somewhere? Are there places they can go to see folks interact who are deaf, or see folks interact who are blind? And what's the best place for someone to get an emotional charge with folks that may be related to the South Carolina School for the Deaf and Blind?
There's plenty of opportunities for people. I know that there's many, within the local areas. As far as the coastal region, I'm not too up to par of what goes on in this area.
Sure.
But in the Midlands area, they, like even the local mall, one of the local malls, Columbiana Center, they offer a silent dinner. And it's usually once a month on a Saturday night in their food court. And you can go there and you will see anywhere between 40 to 100 deaf people all compiled in one area, communicating, having a good time, and it allows, it's in a mall. So,
Right.
I mean, there's, it just allows everybody to kind of see, how they interact and what happens. It's just a good
And
experience.
deaf folks are comfortable with that. They
Absolutely.
want folks who don't speak or don't use American Sign Language to see them interacting.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, they're just like anybody else.
Sure,
And,
sure.
it's just, they go and just, do their thing and, interact and socialize. I mean, we have a Deaf Golfers Association in South Carolina.
Right.
They have the South Carolina Association for the Deaf, which is the advocacy agency for the deaf. They provide many different types of, group events or, types of workshops or what have you. Same thing with the Commission for the Blind. So, even though they're not associated with the School for the Deaf and Blind at all, those are the advocacy agencies for those individuals, and they provide information or what have you as far as
Great.
events that happen in that
It's
particular
good to
area.
know. Thanks so much for being with us this morning, Scott, and thanks for all you do.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me here today.
Absolutely. Stay tuned to more Carolina People with Scott Falcone coming up next. Two reasons to focus this morning. You think about that aspect. Just think about the practical side there in the Falcone house when the doorbell was ringing. How did his parents know? Because the lights would come on. When the phone was ringing, how did they know? Some lights would come on somewhere in the house, even when Scott was young enough and he was crying. How did his parents know? There was something going on that let them know. Certain households, even folks in our viewing area, are going through those same aspects. Lights are coming on when a sound is made, when a doorbell's ringing, or when a phone's going off. A lot of folks are impacted that way. There's similar things for vision impairment. If it's not you, it's someone you know, even someone you love. To learn more about it, give them a call at 843-248-8100. 843-248-8100. In addition, if you like to play golf, Saturday, June 11th, it'll be a big day at Eagle Nest Golf Club. $40 a person, $160 a foursome, $100 for a hole sponsorships. They still got a couple of holes that aren't yet sponsored. Give them a call, 843-248-8100. It'll be a big day. A lot's included in that $40. It'll be great weather. We've already had a talk with somebody. We're going to make sure it's great weather. Saturday, June 11th. Give them a call, 843-248-8100.